Hi and welcome to the next tutorial. Today we're going to look at creating a Lego block like this using dimensions and constraints. So let's open up a new Fusion document. So the first thing that we need to know is we need to know the dimensions that create this Lego block. So it's going to be a rectangle over here with a distance from this point to this point at 15.8, and from this point to this point it's going to be 7.8. So the first thing I'm going to do in Fusion is I'm going to make sure I click on my line tool. I'm going to click on my top plane and I can check over here to see if I am in the top plane. My sketch palette is out, which will have all my constraints, and we're going to use some of them as we go along. And this point over here should be your first starting point. It is known as the origin. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw out a rectangle. Okay, now I'm not too worried about the sizing. I'm just going to make sure that I'm doing an actual rectangle. Okay, so now that I have that rectangle, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my constraints to find the midway point, and I'm going to look for that symbol, and I'm just going to cut it in half. So I'm going to click on line tool again, and I'm going to hover my mouse until I see that triangle, and then I'm just going to draw a line straight up. Now so far what I've done is I've just pretty much cut this rectangle in half, so there's two halves here. Now I don't want that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on that line and press this button over here, normal or construction. A construction line is just used as a reference point, so now it's still one whole shape. I just have this dotted line in the middle. I am going to do the same thing for the other side, so find the midpoint and then just draw a line over, and then make sure that it's a construction line. So I'm going to use that to place my circles a little bit later. So the next thing I need to do is I need to put the right measurements in there for this rectangle. So I know that this distance is 15.8 and that distance is 7.8. So I'm going to add them in by pressing on D for dimension, or going to sketch, dimension, and I'm going to start at this point over here, click on one side, click on the other side, draw out, and this was 15.8 mils. Now the distance from there to there is 7.8. So I'm going to grab D again, click on this point, that point, and then write 7.8. Now you can see that the midpoint, because we have used constraints, it will always go to the midpoint of whatever dimensions that you have. Okay. The next thing that we need to do is a few circles. So we know that the circles have a diameter of 5 mils. So I'm just going to draw a circle by using a center diameter. I'm just going to put it in there, and I'm just going to then grab the D tool. So now I've got one circle in, okay, and I'm going to grab another circle and just draw it in. But I'm now going to use my constraints of equal to make sure that this circle is exactly the same size as that circle. So this one is already has a diameter of 5, so that means that this one also has a diameter of 5 now. So now I can move those circles around and place them nicely. Now what we need to worry about is we need to worry about this distance here, which is going to be 3 mils, and the distance from the centers of the circle will be 8 mils. Okay, so by pressing the D tool and then pressing from the insides of the circles, we can now draw that and make sure that those two circles from the center are exactly 8 mils apart. Okay, now you can see that there are two distinct colors here. We have the blue lines of the circles, which basically means that these circles can move around. Okay, so they're kind of locked here because of this dimension. Everything else is black. When everything is black, that means that it's tied down and it's actually locked. So you don't really want this. You don't want your circles to be able to move around. So what we need to do is we need to find out the distance from this point to the circle, and we need to be able to lock that down. So if we look at this, if we know that the total distance is 15.8, but we know that that distance is 8 mils, The remainder of that distance, if we half that, should be what we have on each side. So if we look at the measurements, which were 15.8 minus 8 gives us 7.8, and then if we divide that by 2, that will give us this, the dimension from this point to the center of the circle. So what we're going to do is we are going to use dimension to lock those things down. So press D, click on those 2 points, okay, and then we're going to write 3.9, okay. And you can see that as soon as I have done that, I have now locked everything into place, and that means that I can't move these things. So everything is the correct dimensions as per the diagram, and now all I have to do is extrude it. So the final step, you know, the extrusion, we have the height here, which is 3.2, and the height of the circles are 1.7. So that's the final step. So I'm going to click E for extrude. Gonna zoom in. So the first height was 3.2 mils. Okay, I'm gonna go back into my sketch, click this little light bulb so I can see it. I'm just going to hold both of those down, press shift, and this will go up 3.2 plus 1.7, which will be 4.9. And I can take the light bulb off so it looks a little bit nicer. And there we have it. There we have our Lego block, which was locked down to our dimensions, and we have learned to use a few constraints and things like that. So anyways guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.